Welcome back to another segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons. Today I'm being joined by a special guest. Tony Becker, who played Drew Cutler, Elizabeth's boyfriend on the Waltons, is joining me. Please welcome Tony.
And we've been trying to get this together for so long. And one day you feel great. You're like, oh yeah, I want to do it tomorrow. And the next day you don't feel so. And I'm not used to any of that. I think you and I were similar as far as how we were athletic and wanting to go out and do everything. And all of a sudden your body says no. And you're like, wait, no, you've never said that to me before. And now, at 36 years old, it's really starting to slow me down. I really don't believe I'm any older than that.
I understand. Yeah. The things that take it out of us now, if I have a long day and I'm like exhausted at the end of the day.
It can be brutal. It can be brutal.
Yeah. And then we can look back at ourselves when we were young. I mean, isn't that the best? It's like having professional home movies.
But is it, now let me ask you this. Does anyone in your family still watch these shows, or do they roll their eyes like my daughters do?
I don't know that anyone in my immediate family does. Of course, my son watches parts of them because he does all my editing. So he's very familiar with it. So unfortunately, he has to look at all that stuff all the time in putting these segments together.
I have probably got my daughter Riley to watch the Waltons more than any other show that I would.
Really?
Because she's all in, the Hallmark Channel it's coming on soon, I think, for the Christmas season. But she'll watch that, but she won't watch Oregon Trail that I did with Rod Stewart beforehand, or the Tour of Duty, which is on every Sunday or every Saturday. She's like, Dad, come on. Look at him like a hero. Look at Dad. So
does she have a favorite work of yours that she likes to watch?
No.
Oh.
I was fortunate just this last few months ago. I worked on The Pit.
Cool.
With Noah. And so she'll be excited about that. Although when it finally comes on, I said, don't tell anybody your dad's in that, because they may cut it out, or you may just go, wow, you're so old, Dad, because I'm playing an old guy. Uh-huh. And, I was telling the guys at work, I was going, oh, my daughters are going to be just devastated when they see how old I look in this. But that was hey, that's what I was going to ask you. What stage were we on?
26.
Because they're shooting on 21 and 22.
Okay. We did some, I think 20 was the other stage that we used for non-Walton interiors. If there was the Dewdrop Inn or some room that we didn't accommodate on stage 26. I think that was another stage they frequently used.
Well, I'll tell you, to go back to work there after all this time and after some of the stuff that I've been through, I had told a friend of mine, because after I'd gotten sick and I got better, and then last year I went for a motocross ride. And I was out in the middle of nowhere by myself, riding like I was 19. And I called my friend who's a professional motocross rider, and I said, Todd, I wanted to weep. I just thought that would never happen again. And it was really emotional for me. So then next thing I know, I'm pulling on to Warner Brothers, and I get out of my truck and I just go, woo-hoo-hoo, you're so happy to be there. And I get on set, and Noah comes in and puts his arms out and goes, welcome home, man. And it was amazing. And then the day's work was great. And there was a moment there when I stood back and I didn't have there was no self-consciousness or any of the stuff you think you might have when you haven't worked or something for a little while. You can have some insecurity when you get on a new set in a big show like that. None of it. I didn't have any of that. I just felt like this is where we're supposed to be. And I said that to the guys. I told them the story about the motocross thing. I said, I feel I could lose it actually right here, right now, because you're with these great people and you're in that environment that only we know. You can't share that environment with anybody unless you lived it, and when you're there, you're thinking, and I remember I thought it was, if it was maybe 20, or 26, whichever, they all look alike. And I just felt like, God, I used to park my Blazer right here, when you used to be able to drive on the lot. It was cool. And then I walked around and saw where the house was, which is now no longer there. But the pond is still there. That was cool.
Really? Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I thought they took out the whole back lot.
No, the pond is still there. They're still use that, but that's where it ends, actually, right past the pond. But, so there was, it was kind of, bittersweet.
Yeah.
Because
it's different.
You guys grew up on that lot. I felt like I did too. I was going there from when I was 9 till, well, we were still going there when I was in my 30s, and I would go over there from Hollywood High School with my jersey on and park my truck right on the lot. It's crazy.
What other shows did you film there that you remember?
There was a bunch of television pilots we did there. The McKenzies or something. There was, none of them come to mind. I can't remember the names. I did a Disney show right there. Which interestingly enough, the SPCA officer was my cousin. She was there. We had to throw a snake out of the scene. And it was with Barry Corbin. I played his son. And old Barry, he was a good guy. He'd say, I remember sitting right on the lot, right past where the Waltons was, there was the Western town. And we were sitting on horseback. I had to do a fall off a horse or something. And he said, I said, hey, it might rain tomorrow, Barry. He said, I hope it does rain tomorrow, Tony. I'm supposed to take my family to Disneyland. I hate Disneyland. I never forget it. It's so funny. He'd say things like, how you doing today? Oh, I throw so much at this body. Once in a while, she gets back at me. And so he's just great. But that was a big one. The Waltons was what I was there doing most of the time. And that when you're that young and it's just happening and there's work and there's work and there's more work, you kind of, you definitely take it for granted because it's just happening so fast. I kind of went through all those years with blinders on and I never even looked, side to side. So, but I remember being on when I think ER had just started and Noah, the reason I know Noah Wiley, he grew up down the street from my sister babysat him. We knew each other forever, but he had come out to the set. Him and George Clooney had come out to the set to say hello. And they were such a place.
Yeah.
Such a great atmosphere and the crew and other times when we were doing scenes that were, real simple scenes where you get them and the crew would be behind the camera trying to make you laugh. That was always helpful.
Yeah, right.
That was always helpful.
You got to have some fun while you're doing it. And I think they always sort of know who they can play with that it won't throw them off their game or, the person won't be by it.
They know you can't mess with some folks.
Yeah. And I think they're usually also respectful if it's an emotional scene. Like you said, if it's a scene where you're just dorking around anyway,
I'll try and get you to break. You'd swear, I would tell them, you can't get me to break. And they would try everything. I remember being on the front porch, somebody probably giving Cammie a kiss goodnight or something. I'm supposed to turn and do something. And these guys were bouncing off the walls and I didn't break. It was fun. But that's another thing that we've talked about before, because I came onto the Waltons way at the end, almost the last year, the second to last year.
Yeah. And
that is a very difficult place to be, or can be, for an actor coming onto a set. Everybody is family. They know what's going on. And you're like, oh man, I don't want to mess up the flow, because you guys at that point aren't even thinking. Everyone there knows what they're doing. And the new actors that come in there, they're really trying to figure it out. There was nothing ever uncomfortable. Ever. It was always great. Cammie's fantastic. And all of you guys, we all just got along. And it was probably the reason the show stayed on so long.
Yeah. I always ask my guests, like how you came to get the part, the audition process. How did that come about?
It's a long time ago, but back then, if I remember right, it was a simpler process. It was, you had your agent. I was working a lot at the time, so I guess I was in a different thing. I never really looked at where I was as an actor. I didn't think, oh man, I just was like lucky to get a meeting. And my parents were both actors. So just being honest and going in, but we had a meeting, read, then would come in again and read for, I think, gosh, who was in there? Earl Hamner was in there, and whoever was directing. I think that's who was in the room. But I remember Earl, of course, because he was great, and the job, my first job was I was playing the sidekick to the other guy who she was to go out with. And I didn't even realize that it was going to turn the other way. I had no clue. And I don't know how that came about. But I do remember, Earl being really happy with whatever I was doing, and got the job, went to work, and we did it. I remember distinctly, though. I remember the scene we did where she and I are starting to get to be boyfriend and girlfriend. Now, the young guy dropping the girl off, and she goes in the house, and I turn back. And it's that's not in there, I turn back towards where the camera is, and I just kind of, you see this young guy go, wow, this is great. Like he's really, really relieved that this might really work out. And it was a really great, really perfect moment, I thought. And then it just went on from there. And then what was great was working with Ralph. Ralph, to me, was just, one of our greatest American actors. And to be with him, and I was a carpenter. So for me to work in the sawmill was all perfect.
That's great. I get asked a lot about that with the boys who had to work the sawmill, and how was that, and were the blades real, and was the wood and all of that. Did they give you guys any instruction? And Eric said, no, they pretty much just threw us in there.
Keep your hands to your sides. Yeah, no, they didn't. I don't think we ever. Yeah, we were cutting some wood on some of them. I remember that, but I don't. No, they don't really. I mean, the first time I learned to drive a stick shift was doing St. Elsewhere, or not St. Elsewhere. It was what was one of the other shows in the early 80s? They had a bunch of shows that were like evening. They were like nighttime. Gosh, I can't even get my words right.
Yeah, like Hill Street Blues and.
Yeah, it was before that. It was before that. It was kind of a dumb one. It was I shouldn't say dumb.
Now you can't remember and talk about the show.
Yeah, they were like nighttime serials that were about relationships and all this, the whole families. And God, why can't I remember the name of that show? It's a big time show. Anyway, I get out there, same thing. Have to pick my girlfriend up in a car, and they got a Volkswagen. And they say, "Do you drive a stick shift?" I said, "Sure." And I just got in and learned. It was that simple, But they did that on all kinds of shows. I did a Disney thing. I think that was out of Warner Brothers for a little while. For some reason, we were shooting stuff over there instead of Disney. And it was the same thing. They just throw stuff at you. I rode horses a lot, and this other kid rode motocross, but they made me the motocross rider and him the horseback rider. And that's kind of what got me into riding bikes. But it was interesting.
Cool. Yeah, it really is. That was the theme of the day. I don't know if actors still feel that way today, but if they say, can you do blah, blah, you always say yes. And then you hope to figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes that backfires,
Can.
But when I've always been really like honest to a fault, right? So I'll say, I just won't want to misrepresent myself because I don't want to get there with 250 people waiting for me to do something that I can't do.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'd rather, be, because also I don't want to get hurt really. I don't want to. You want
to be heads up on whatever they want you to do. But then there was a friend of mine, Adam Taylor. He and I were doing Wrangler jean commercials. So I went in there for this Wrangler jean commercial, and they said, they don't want to meet Tony. They don't want me to come and go, "Hi guys, how you doing?" They want me to come and go, "Hey, how y'all doing? Good to see you." Yeah, I ride. How well do I ride? I don't fall off very much, but then if I do, it's only so far to the ground. I can hang in there a little while. And so I do this whole commercial, the meeting. So then they call and they go, "Okay, now I'm at home. I'm sitting with my friends. I've got a Pilsner beer and I'm sitting in the backyard." And they say, "Hey, so how often do you ride rough stock?" I said, "What? I don't ride rough stock. I'm an actor. I was just pretending," And so Adam ended up doing the rough stock one. I did another one, but Adam said, "I'm not getting on that horse. I'll fall in front of the camera, but I'm not I'm not getting on that, So then you're like, oh, I didn't take it. And I would have enjoyed to have that one. And so I don't know. Sometimes when you're honest, it backfires. I mean, I always got to be honest, but it's a strange field. And then you get working with somebody and they can't drive at all. And you're the passenger thinking this is not going to end well. But I was in all the cars we had on that. The cars on the show, the tree on the tree. And, I was just 15, 16 years old trying to figure that out. And I loved it.
I think a number of Richard, the transportation department taught him to drive. Will Gear never drove, so they always had to double him. Leslie said there was a point where they didn't let her drive because they were afraid she'd run somebody over because she had so much trouble with that big giant red car that Cindy was supposed to drive. And she nearly, hit something one time. David, with the car that Jim Bob built, it was nuts and bolts. And he was young and you see him at times bumping into things as he's driving.
And the other biggest mistake guys would make is this happened quite a few times on shows that I was on. They would reset the car. The actor would be in there and they'd reset the car and they'd leave it in reverse.
Oh.
And they'd go and they'd back up and take out 5 lights and everybody, whoa, 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 whoa. It was the best. It was common enough that if I was working, I would always have to check and make sure. Kind of the same thing like I did the military thing with a lot of weapons on the set. And you'd do a scene and you'd have these weapons and they'd say, okay, you ready to go? Yeah, let me see that weapon again. And I'd make sure the breech was everything. Even though I just looked at it 30 seconds ago, I'd look at it again before it's just too dangerous. It's too many variables that could go wrong. And it is hard because as most actors, not most, but a lot of actors are just, this is my department. Everything else is someone else's department. And they're right. But for me, I think, well, yeah, but this is a weapon. And if somehow there's a round in there, even if it's a blank round, it's deadly, and so I'd always have to check that stuff. And there's a lot of things we all start doing after a while of redundancy through the whole shooting process,
Yeah. No, it's your own safety and everybody else's,
How was your education from there?
It was great.
Was it?
Yeah. I think it was better than because I was just transitioning to high school as I started the series. So I was just graduating junior high when we did the homecoming. And then by the time the series started, I was in high school. And just having that one-on-one on any of my subjects and being able to, if there was something I was having trouble with, to get that personal attention. And then the stuff that I was just on top of, it was like, okay, they could just leave me alone and I'd get that done. But, when you've got a class of 30 students running into trouble, the teacher can't spend that time with every single student. And it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
So because you weren't, you were older before you did a full-time series. So in terms of your school, you were back and forth then.
I was back and forth forever. I didn't have it the way you guys had it. I was always I did a pilot or 2 or 3 every year. I was really lucky to work. I really was very lucky. What I didn't have is I didn't have a plan. My parents were actors. My mom and dad went to Pasadena Playhouse. This is what they did. My mom had a repertory theater group all her life. My dad was now working at KTLA as an audio engineer. And I think it was, I just took it for granted. It was something I did. I loved doing it. And then there were times where I thought, I don't know if I love it. It all depends on the shows. The hard part is when you get on a show like the Waltons, or you get on a show like Tour of Duty, shows that are trying to make a statement about humanity. Each show is telling a little something about how we could be better. Then you go out for something that is like, this is what am I doing this show for? I'm just not making any statement. It's not even that entertaining. It's hard to get your mind wrapped around it. And it kind of ruins you to a certain extent, because it's hard to go do just a simple, fun, little, just entertaining show when you've had all these moments where you're like, God, this is great. I get to say this. Mm-hmm. So it made it different. And the other thing is so I never stayed in school. I did Texas Wheelers, which was in 72. And that was, I don't know if we did 13 shows or not. But that was quick. And then the Oregon Trail, which was 13 shows and out, and then back to school. And I was always going in and out. And since my friends were from kind of the inner city and rougher circumstances, I was embarrassed to be an actor. I didn't want to tell them because it felt like, it was rude. It was, you'd be brag. Why would I want to brag about that? When these guys have it hard, why would I want to say anything? And so that was a balance to figure out.
And how was that for you, though, to be in and out of school that much? Was it hard to stay up on things?
Yeah.
School
you wanted to play, I wanted to play football. I wanted to be part of the school. And it was difficult. And I don't think it was terrible. I mean, there were some other, families have their own tumultuous times. My mom and dad divorced when I was 13. And so there was the whole family dynamics going on. But I had really, really good friends, really good, really kept me, I think, it's pretty centered. And I was always more into the outdoors than I was parties or drinking or any of that stuff. I never got into it. I'd rather go to bed Friday night and get up at 4 a.m. and go up to the mountains and go do finger motocross riding or something.
I think we were sort of lucky in that era also because the studio, fortunately, they never contracted, like put clauses in my contract that I couldn't do things.
Yeah.
And now I think it's much stricter about sometimes like when you're in a show or, that you can't go skydiving, you can't go snow skiing, and you can't train with the roller derby, and you can't, jump horses and all the stuff that I was doing, or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I don't. I'm sure it is. I'm sure it's different. It's just, when I grew up, I was really, very physical and really into mountain bike riding and motocross and whatever. And when I did a lot of horse stuff, so I did some rodeo stuff and roped, and not that I was ever any good at it, but I just did it. But then when stunts would come along, the guys, how actors would be, I do all my own stunts. I'm like, well, yeah, but that guy gets a $1,500 bump if he does the stunt. So what are you trying to prove? I would always let the guys do it because they were friends of mine, and that's how they made their living. And no one's going to know the difference. Yeah, I can repel out of that. Why? But why? So, I enjoyed that too. And the other thing, growing up that young in the business, I have a lot of friends now that were older. We were told what to wear, what to say, when and where to be, all this stuff. And so then they throw you out into the real world. And you're like, what do I do out here? I don't know how to talk to these people. Well, I don't have that education, And so that was always kind of interesting to me. It was just different. And knowing producers and writers and directors back then, I didn't want to because I'm afraid. Although I worked really hard to make sure that whatever I was doing was honest, at least tried to, that's the whole thing is you didn't do it. You go, well, that was totally fake. None of this is working. This does not feel like we're sitting in the living room having a conversation. And you try to get it to where, okay, this is great. But you just try to do the best you can. And so I didn't want some of the producers or writers or directors. I thought they like what I'm doing on the set. They don't need to know that I'm just a guy that drives a pickup truck and wants to rope steers. Let's just leave that out of it. And now in retrospect, they would love doing all that. They're all great people. Every time I run into people who I haven't seen forever, they had the same feeling about working on the show as I did. And no matter what film, what it was, everyone knows what a wonderful thing to be involved with. This is any production, and they all have the same memories, And then you also can't go home and talk to your friends about some of it because they don't really get it. And it's like being an actor is if you're working, everybody wants to be you, and if you're not, everyone feels sorry for you. There's no in between.
Thank you for joining me for this conversation with Tony Becker. I hope you enjoyed part 1. If you did, please do hit like and subscribe. I will be back with more behind the scenes of the Waltons, more Ask Judy, and more with Tony Becker. Thanks for watching.